Gen Xers have a big money concern, but it's not about running out of money too fast in retirement. It's this. Hello, my fellow Ripplers. This is Chris Miles, your cash flow expert and anti-financial advisor. This show is for you. You've worked so hard for that money and you're now ready. You're ready for that money to start working harder for you today. You want that freedom, that cash flow. You want to become work optional where you have enough passive income coming in that you work because you want to, not because you have to. But you're not just doing it to get rich. You're not just doing it to have a great, comfortable life, which is an awesome thing, by the way. But you're doing it because you want to create a ripple effect through the lives of others. You want to live a rich life. You want to be able to bless more lives because as you have more money, more resources, you have a greater stewardship, you have a greater ability to bless the lives of those around you. That is the ripple effect I'm here to create. I appreciate you tuning in, joining us today, and being a part of this movement because this ripple effect cannot happen without you. In fact, we want 1,000 of you families financially independent by the year 2030. If you want to be one of those families, I would recommend going to moneyripples.com and trying out the passive income calculator to see how much passive income you could be creating in the next 12 months. Go try that out today. All right, guys. So as I mentioned, Gen Xers have a big money concern, and it's not running out of money in retirement like previous generations have been. Now, I thought I had something like my guess is what it was, and I was 100% completely wrong. So here's the deal, guys. Like, it's not about running out of money too soon, and it's not even just about inflation. That was kind of my guess in that sense. That wasn't it at all. Although it does deal with money concerns. The biggest concern isn't about retirement at all, but it's more about something more specific, which is healthcare costs. MarketWatch did a recent article saying that Gen Xers are actually now more concerned about rising healthcare costs, especially as they're moving into retirement, because the oldest Gen Xer of my generation now is in their 60s, in their early to mid 60s right now. And so as a result, the big thing they're starting to notice is that healthcare costs are huge. Even if you have a company plan, the problem is this, is that healthcare costs have been going up like crazy ever since the ACA, the Affordable Care Act, aka Obamacare. Ironic they call it the Affordable Care Act. You know this, right? You know that if you're self-employed, especially if you make decent money and you don't get subsidies, the insurance rates are ridiculous. I know my wife and I got a quote just in the last few years on health insurance. We said, what would it be just for the two of us, not including our family plan, just as us as a couple? And you know what we found out? It was going to be over $1,500 a month. $1,500 a month. This is why I brought on Keaton Patey on one of my previous episodes. You guys can look up on this channel. But that's why, it's ridiculous how much it is. I remember just back in 2013, 2014, right about the time the transition was happening, that I was paying for a healthcare plan that was roughly about $400 a month. And maybe you remember that too. But those costs are going up. But it's not just the insurance costs, but it's also Medicare costs and the things that Medicare doesn't cover. And that's what people are worried about right now, especially Gen Xers as they're moving to retirement. They're realizing if you don't have that company helping to pay for some of these things, even if you do, there's other costs coming out. And I remember this affected my dad as well. It shocked me. I remember when I was in that meeting, when I sat down with him as a financial advisor, one of the things that came up, he was talking about how his expenses had gone up so much more. Not because he had this tremendously crazy lifestyle, because if you've heard stories before, he was pretty cheap, right? This guy was not blowing money left and right. This guy didn't travel much. He didn't do a whole lot. And so his expenses were pretty small. But before he hit retirement, he started having bursitis in his shoulder, and it required a shot, an injection that he was getting about once a month that cost him about $1,000 a month after health insurance kicked in. That was his out-of-pocket cost. That alone was about a 25% bump up in his expenses. That's something he was not expecting, and of course cost him dearly. That same thing is happening to us as Gen Xers. As things are getting more expensive, we're seeing rising healthcare costs go crazy. Then the government tries to step in and do things about it. But whenever the government steps in, you know what happens? It gets more expensive, right? Because there's all this extra red tape and things have to jump through. And then we have to pay for it with our tax dollars. And then we have to pay for it too because it costs more money for the medical industry. And then they jack up the rates again, right? And so it just creates this horrible situation where it just keeps rising and rising way faster than the money you're making. And so we're seeing these rising healthcare costs be bad. Estimations, now there's different opinions on this about how much you might be paying in healthcare costs, like out of pocket healthcare costs over your lifetime. Of course, it depends on how long you live. But for those that are in their 60s right now, the estimation is anywhere from around $150,000 to $300,000 per person that you could be paying over your lifetime. And that can create some stress because you're already trying to figure out how you have enough money for retirement. But if you knew you had to come out of pocket an additional, say, $200,000, that's not easy. And just so you know, doesn't, I mean, even though I'm a big fan of long-term care and I recommend people get it, right? That's great. But this is outside of what long-term care would cover for you. This is just medical expenses. So what are the answers? Now, if you go look around, you'll hear people say, well, get that health savings account. That is one option. And there's nothing bad about it. By the way, if you don't have a health savings account right now, but you have an IRA, you can transfer money from your IRA or an old 401k to a health savings account and have no penalty and no tax. Why? Because it's still in a government plan that defers taxes. The great thing about health savings account is that it is a tax deduction, right? It's using pre-tax dollars to go in, or if you're using after tax, you get the tax deduction. This is why if you use IRA money to transfer over, you don't get taxed because it still stays pre-taxed. Then you can then use that money for medical expenses. The government knows this. They know that medical costs are one of the biggest factors that's draining the funds of our system right now, our system that's costing us trillions of dollars every year. This is a big chunk of it, is those medical care costs that we have. So they want to incentivize you to do that. Now, is there another way? What else could you be doing to help prevent this? This comes back to what we talk about in getting work optional, right? If you've been following this podcast, you're probably looking for great ways to create passive income right now, right? Well, we got you covered here with Central Lending. Central Lending specializes in alternative investments that actually are designed to create steady returns and long-term financial security for you and your family. Now, they prioritize transparency. They love, building those strong relationships, giving you that confidence and peace of mind, knowing that you have your money working harder for you, so you don't have to work so hard for that money. You want to learn more how to do that? Go to centrallending.com and check out what they've got today to create your passive income and wealth creation right now. I find it's interesting, but this is a legitimate fear. One of the biggest fears I see a lot of our clients have is they'll say, okay, like if I quit my job, how bad is health insurance going to be? And sometimes they'll treat like they're going to be paying like $5,000 a month or something for health insurance. It's not that much. In fact, in many cases, we hook them up with different types of insurance that might have better discounts depending on your health rating, depending on your age, and things like that too. There could be other options besides just the Affordable Care Act. Now, of course, if you do retire, there are still some things that can happen. There are, if you're in your 60s, Medicare. If you're not in your 60s, of course, there's still, the marketplace. You can go with health insurance and you might be able to get some subsidies. But if you're a high income level, if you're making over six figures or well into the six figures, you might not get any of that. But I'll tell you this, again, from my experience, from having a couple, and at our age, we're, my wife is 50. I'm almost approaching my 50s right now. And so for both of us, yeah, you're looking at least, 13, 1400, 1500 a month or so, depending on what kind of deductible you get. Here's what I always recommend our clients do because they get worried about this. Like, yeah, it's going to be more expensive. It may or may not be, depending on the plan that we can get you, which of course we have people in our network we can connect them with that sometimes does save them money, or even better yet, they pay the same as what they're paying when they did have a company helping to contribute to some of their medical care costs. And that's this. The biggest thing is this: passive income. I know you've heard it so many times, but it's true. Passive income is the answer. Passive income is the thing that allows you to have more. And so, yes, you might try to save $200,000 plus or $300,000, right? And again, these are all estimates. If medical care costs keep going up, who's to say it couldn't be approaching $500,000 in a few decades? Maybe you're a little ways away from retirement. You might have to have more money saved up. Or what if you're to say, let's just go with that $200,000, right? Let's just say you have the $200,000 right now. You know that medical care costs might cost you, over, like you said, might cost you about 10 grand a year. What if you could take $200,000, invest it, earn 10%? What are you making? $20,000 a year, right? You're making $20,000 a year on average, about $1,600 or so dollars a month. Could you be using that? If you're not even at the point of worrying about retirement or whatever, maybe you don't have to worry about these medical care costs yet, but you want to be prepared. Great. Get that 200,000, invest that money and reinvest it. As we talk about, like always reinvesting the cash flow, right? Creating that income avalanche, reinvesting that to grow it and more. Who's to say you can't get that 20,000 a year up to like over 30,000 a year or whatever it might be? That is a great answer. That's where you don't have to just have money sitting in cash, hoping it's going to be around. Again, you could do that strategy. And I'm not saying you don't do a health savings account, but you can only put so much into a health savings account. They limit you based on all the rules, much like a Roth IRA. So that's why we have something like this, right? This is why we can invest into things to create passive streams of income to help you there. The answer is always the same, right? The one thing that people always worry about, even though they said it's not money, they're not worried about running out of money. They're worried about healthcare costs because healthcare costs would cause them to run out of money. I thought it was an interesting little hook they tried to do in the article, but ultimately it's still about money. And it's really about cash flow and income. Do I have the income coming in that will be able to pay for all of those things that might have to come out of my pocket, right? Do I have the cash reserves that I need? This is why infinite banking can be an additional benefit there, right? But it always comes back to passive income. So your best bet, if you want to get rid of those money worries, you want to not be worrying about how am I going to pay these bills? What am I going to do? I might have to move in with my kids later on, and then we have this generational squeeze because they're raising their kids and they're just trying to take care of you, or you guys are trying to go in all together because houses are too expensive. The answer is the same. Create passive income. Get to the point where you're not just work optional, where you have enough money to work because you want to, not because you have to, but create extra buffer to where you have financial freedom. Then you're not worried about this stuff. Then you can start doing some more things in your life now versus just saving and slaving away until your 60s or maybe into your 70s because you're so worried about losing those benefits. You should never let fear dictate your life. Don't let fear drive you away. Like, don't let just drive you into madness. Go into a place of faith. And the way you have faith is when you know that when things are certain, when you're prepared, you shall not fear. Get prepared. And the best way to prepare right now is passive income. So as I said in the beginning of the show, there's a passive income calculator. Figure out what you can do actually today. How can you get that ball rolling? Try the passive income calculator at moneyripples.com. But ultimately, this is the thing you need to learn is what do I need to do? How can I create passive income? And maybe is there a way I can create passive income that doesn't require a ton of time, a ton of education and experience? It doesn't require me to go and spend 10, 20 hours a week like one of our clients that just hired us did. They were literally spending 10, 20 hours a week, even after having a financial advisor point them towards alternative investments. They were still like researching like crazy. I was like, hey, listen, we've got a ready-made vetted group of investors that you could be putting your money with. Doesn't mean that you have to, but man, that could save you a heck of a lot of time being able to do something like that. And so understand that there are ways to create shortcuts here. There are ways to make it easier that you don't have to do it on your own. You can have somebody walk with you side by side as a guide. And again, if we can ever support you in that, let us know. But ultimately, this is the thing. If you don't want to become another statistic, you don't want to become like the other stressed out Gen Xers of my generation, the best thing to do is create passive income. Because I'll tell you, I'm not worried about it, and neither should you. I guarantee you probably have the ability and means to change your life by getting those income streams in today. And that's how you can rest easy at night. That's how you're going to have more confidence, clarity, and a more greater certainty in your future so you don't feel like you become a burden on your kids or anyone else or the government or anything. You know that you're self-sufficient, you're independent, you're powerful, and you can confidently move forward through life knowing that you and your family are taken care of and you get to live life on your own terms. Go and make it a wonderful and prosperous week. We'll see you later.